So I've actually been looking to make this video for about 3 to 4 weeks now, and finally, I'm sitting down, I'm gonna make this video, I'm dedicated doing it. It is how I grade my HLG footage from my Sony a7 III. So the reason I'm making this video is this HLG picture profile seems to be really popular. A lot of people are switching to it, and when starting off, it can be a little bit tricky trying to get the colors right and trying to get your color grade the way you want it. So I'm gonna take you through my process of how I color grade HLG2. That is the picture profile I use, HLG2 with Rec 709 color space. I tried BT 2020, but as you could probably tell from some of the footage, my skin tones tended to come out a little too orangey, so I don't like that, and it was too much to fix in post, so I don't want to deal with that. But HLG2 seems to be a bit better on that and also perform a little bit better in low light. So let's take a deep dive into my iMac, and I will show y'all my color grading process, and also maybe a little shortcut that might help y'all out. All right, so here we are in Premiere Pro. I have everything pulled up already. All my clips are over here interpreted as 23.976, so we're good to go there. And I've already pre-selected a bunch of clips right here that we're gonna go through and color grade. And all these clips, by the way, are shot in HLG2. Now some of them you see say Ninja 5, and that's because I did film this with my Ninja 5. But they do allow HLG picture profile on the Ninja 5, so I did that. So let's dive into it. First, I go adjustment layer, pull that up, click OK, drag and drop that on here. Now I'm gonna just drag this across all of these so that they're there, ready to go. And let's just cut this, so we're dealing with this one right here. All right, so first thing I do is I deal with the basic correction, right? You wanna go up here, deal with anything exposure-wise, contrast-wise, shadows. So on this one, everything looks pretty good, but what I will do is add a little bit more contrast in there, usually around 30, 35. And then depending on the brightness of the image, I do like to boost the highlights and the whites a little bit. And what I do is I go over here to Lumetri Scopes while I'm doing this to make sure nothing is clipping over here. Not too much. It's okay if there's like a little bit right there. Ideally, you want to keep everything below this 100 marker right there, so that looks pretty good. And you can bring up the highlights. The highlights tend to not push this over the 100 mark, but if that's way underexposed, then you bring up the whites, it's gonna boost it up there really quick, as you can see. So we'll keep it right about there. That's already looking really good. Saturation, and that is the beauty right there of HLG. You get the saturation up there to 26, and that already looks like an almost usable image. You could totally stop right there if you wanted to, at least on this clip. But let's play around with the shadows a little bit more. The shadows just bring a little bit more contrast, that darkness into those shadow areas. I do play around with the white balance just to see where it's at, because on this setting, I actually have light from outside, ambient light, but then I also have the light from inside that's more of a yellow light. Even though the inside lights are like a 5500 Kelvin, you can see because it's nighttime, it kind of throws some of that off. I actually do like a little bit warmer out here, so right around there, that looks good. Now you can see a little bit of the yellow, so sometimes what I like to do is I go down to curves. With HLG, you tend to have this issue more than some of the other picture profiles, but all I'll do, this is a quick fix for that, is click here, and just bring that down just slightly, right around there. Bring the yellow down a little bit more, and you can virtually take the yellow completely out of any of your images just by doing that. See this, if I check this, this is what it looks like with the yellow. This is with it reduced. Now it doesn't remove it completely, but it does diminish it, which that's all we're wanting to do. We're wanting to lower that yellow effect. So we got that. It does look like magenta is a little bit too high, so I'm gonna bring that down just a little bit. I'm looking at the bricks right here. The bricks tend to be a little bit too magenta. All right, let's just go to the next image real fast. Not this one, let's go to another one. Let's go to this one. So this one's outdoors, so it's a little bit different, right? Start on the basic correction, contrast, bring up that contrast. Now this one's broad daylight, so I can increase the contrast a little bit more. The highlights, I do want it to be kind of like bright right there and nothing's too blown out. As you can see over here, nothing's that blown out. You can see over here that the shadows were like way up there, like when I have that there. You want to bring the shadows down to where they're not quite getting to that 0, but that would be a good goal mark. So if I bring that down, all of a sudden, it's definitely giving a little more depth to that image. And you can see if I toggle this on and off, you can see already it's like, whoa, that looks a lot better. Blacks, I can bring the blacks down even further, give it a little bit more contrast. All right, so for curves, I'm gonna show you something else that is really cool that you can do that is kind of a feature I've been using a lot more lately, and that is using the RGB curves right here and not just dealing with the whites. If you've ever dealt with the white luminance, this will change all the colors. So these are the highlights right here. You can bring those up and then you can bring the shadows down right there, and that increases the contrast, right? Midtones in the middle. Now, you can tweak these, the red, the green, the blue, ever so slightly to get a particular look. For instance, if you want a little more orange in the highlights, then you can just go to the blue, and then this is your highlights. You're only dealing with your highlights. If you go up, it's gonna give it more blue, but if you go down just a little bit, it's gonna give you a little more orange in the highlights. Same thing in the shadows. You tend to want blues in the shadows, right? Like that's popular orange and teal look. You can boost the blues in the shadows from just bumping this up right here. You don't wanna overdo it. And then the greens, you can see if you click on these little corners right here, you can boost the greens in the highlights, reduce the greens here, that's gonna bring more magenta. You go to the reds, red and green are opposites, right? So if you go down with the reds in the highlights, you're gonna get a little more green in the highlights. These are quick things that you can use to correct your image. If there are certain colors that are popping out that shouldn't be popping out, you can use this RGB curves to really correct all that. And also the hue saturation curves. If you're just like, no, I don't want any green in there, you go to the greens and you just bring that way down, and then that will get rid of the greens. Let's go to the next image. So the coffee, ooh, this is always fun to color grade. All right, so here we got the coffee. Let's start basic correction. We're gonna go contrast, shadows, highlights up a little bit, whites up. Now what I do like to do, if I'm losing a little bit of detail in the shadows, I actually don't mind upping the shadows right here around. I don't go usually more than like 10 to 15, but you can see like, if I go down to like 20 on the shadows, it gets a little too dark. I mean, it depends on the look that you're going for. If you want that super contrasty, then you just bring the shadows and the blacks down like that. And then you bring the highlights and the whites up. So if that looks good, then roll with it, right? White balance looks pretty good. Saturation even looks pretty decent. I'm actually gonna desaturate it a little bit. Let's mess with the hue versus hue. You can actually choose to alter certain hues. So if I did wanna alter that coffee color, and I would wanna choose the brown hue, so that's right in this area. You only want slight changes here though, like you don't wanna go crazy with it, right? So if you just want a little bit more red, and if you look at that vertical line that is moving right now, I'm moving up and down the vertical line. So if I go down, you can see it's going to the green. If I go even further, it's gonna go to the blues. So obviously it's gonna break apart the image because it's only 8-bit. If you go up, it's gonna go more magenta. So that can give a kind of a cool look depending on what you're going for. So let's only go up just a little bit, just make it a little more red right there. Not much is needed there. If you did want to do like a little faded film look, you can go to faded film right here under creative, bump that up. I'm gonna add another adjustment layer and just show you an example of one of my LUTs that I've actually used for this video. You can spend all this time color grading and correcting, which you still will need to do some of that, but you can throw in a LUT to just speed up this process. And I've created my first LUT pack. It's on my Selfie store. I'm gonna link it in the description below, but you go to Browse, Moody Cinema. So you can see that gives kind of a cool look. It's very different, right? So you toggle that on and off. That's a bold look. And what I don't like with other LUTs is that they tend to be too overpowering. Now let's do another one. Let's go browse. Let's do faded cinema. That one's really cool. Again, you don't have to use like the entire thing, but you can see how it's affecting the image right there. That definitely looks different than our color grade that we just did. And then all you do, you just drag this over for this one, and you can see that if you toggle that on and off, before or after, it kind of gives a cool faded cinema look. And of course, after you do all this, you will have to adjust the image to make sure that your scopes aren't going all out of whack off the hundreds and below the 0. So just adjusting the basic contrast, highlight, shadows to tweak it just a little bit. This, at least you have a good start. So this is what I always do. I have the adjustment layer for the main grade, and then what I do is I correct each individual clip by clicking on the clip and adjusting. All right, I want this one to be a little bit brighter and a little more decreased on the shadows. So you can see that looks really good right there. All right, and so that's basically my color grading process that I do with each and every video that I do professionally here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something from it. Even if just one of y'all learned something, that would be awesome. And if you did, let me know, drop me a comment down below. I look forward to hearing everybody's comments and helping future filmmakers in any way that I can. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you filmmakers in the next video.